Hi everybody, welcome back to the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host, and I'm also the founder of stelliumastrology.com, the former horoscope columnist for Elle Magazine UK, and currently a consulting astrologer with clients, tutor at the London School of Astrology, and teaching students privately as well. So I am recording for you Cancer today, the crabby sign of the Zodiac, our little crabby Cancerians. But actually, I had a lovely little message sent to me that I just wanted to read to you first. Let me see if I can find it. And if you can hear noises in the background, the cats are running around like nutters at the moment. I have to keep the door open because otherwise they get freaked out. And they just charge around like they're running a marathon. So that's what, if you can hear lots of weird noises, it's probably the cats. So I got a lovely message from somebody called Katie recently saying, "Hello Stephanie, I wanted to say thank you for your podcast. I've been trying to self-study for some time but have been confused by so many topics. Your podcasts have cleared this up. I'm so excited to learn more. I'm a mental health nurse and astrology has really helped me better understand the people I care for. I look forward to every show. Please keep going." So I'm really, really happy to receive messages like that. I just think it just makes everything that I'm doing worthwhile. And she's hit the nail on the head here with 2 points actually, because there are so many different areas of astrology. When you first start looking at how to learn it, it's really overwhelming. That was totally my experience. I really didn't know what I was looking for. Oh, there's a cat. No, the cat came in and left. I didn't really know what I was looking for or how to start. I just was reading lots of bits of information and it resonated with me, but I just needed to learn how to pull it all together really. So, actually having somebody who is experienced go through it with me really helped. It really helped me, which is why I joined up with the London School of Astrology, and what I hope to do to help you guys getting off the ground with your studies as well. But also she mentions about learning how to better understand the people that she cares for. That's a major part of astrology for me as well, is understanding other people, because once you've got past the initial understanding of your own birth chart, understanding other people, and like when I went into the elements and the modes previously and broke it down for you down to like motivations and conflict resolution and interaction with conflict and things like that, that's where it really comes, astrology really comes into its own, because you really understand other people in a different way, and where you might get annoyed and frustrated and think, why are they doing this? It may be that actually understanding the elements and the modes in their chart and other aspects of the chart too, the deeper you go, the more it becomes apparent. You really get a sense of understanding where somebody's actually coming from, which I think is really important. So relationship astrology and understanding others is a key part. It's a key part of learning astrology basically. But today we're just going to focus on Cancer. A great quote for Cancer is, "Nothing is better than going home to family and eating good food and relaxing." And that's kind of a Cancerian vibe. They're very they like to provide a comfortable, welcoming, nourishing environment for people to come round and visit. Home is where the heart is as far as Cancer is concerned. So Sun in Cancer, you may relate to that statement. And for Cancerians, family is key. There's a real understanding of the sense of belonging with Cancer. There's a kind of almost like a tribal sense about Cancerians, where there's this kind of we belong together in a sort of like blood sense, bloodline sense. Through the life stages, Cancer is really concerned with security through the family unit and belonging. And if you think about the natal chart, if Aries is the first sign of the zodiac and sits at, if you're looking at a clock, the 9 o'clock position, then we work around. So actually, with Cancer, it sits at the 6 o'clock position if you're looking at a clock. So actually, it's at the bottom. If you're drawing a circle, it's the very bottom point of the circle. And that is actually where we are most introverted, most private, our deepest, darkest psychological depths our psychological basement, really. And that those depths don't just stop at us, they go back to our kind of ancestral heritage and the roots that they reach farther back down through the family line. So you can almost imagine it's the roots of the family tree, and where we are in the family tree, our individual branch is the point where we can grow out into a tree of our own almost, and have our own family on from there, but coming back to this one point where our family up until that point was that was our point of conception, really, and where we come into our branch of the family where we get to put our stamp on it, basically. So it's that area of Cancer in the chart is very feeling, and it's very passive, and it's a female polarity. So like I said before, it's not so conscious of itself, it's not so active and out there, it's much more introspective, introverted, it's quite private, and very connected to what's going on in its family, its loved ones. The glyph for Cancer is the crustacean or the crab, and also it looks like the numbers 6 and 9. But if you almost put your hands on top of your arms, like on top of each arm, and with your fingertips touching each elbow, so they're sort of balanced on top of each other, you can almost imagine if your hands are your pincers, that's the way it looks. The glyph looks like the little pincers, and that's the kind of 6 and 9. That's kind of how I look at it anyway. The pincers kind of are almost where your hands are on top of your elbows. I hope I've described that in a reasonably understandable way. But either way, you could also look at the glyph for Cancer as the breasts, and the breasts are the initial source of nourishment in life. Now, some people may have been raised on powder milk and not been breastfed, but actually any woman who is pregnant and has given birth will have experienced the breast swelling, and whether it's a choice that they don't want to breastfeed, or that they do want to breastfeed, or whether they have issues around that, it's not for the want of the body's natural makeup to have been set up to do that. So it is connected to the breasts, and the breasts are the initial source of nourishment. And Cancer has a sense of intuition about something, and knows really how best to act. And you can kind of put Cancer down, I think, as a kind of first response type person. So especially if there's a bit of Mars involved, Cancer can be immediate with the caregiving. They can know exactly what's needed when it's needed, and they can be there like a shot, providing the person that needs it with exactly what they want. So in a home sense, in a maternal sense, in a family sense, I kind of see Cancerians as the ones that really hold it together. Now, they can be very emotional, they can be very sensitive, and I've grown up with Cancerians, and there is an element of sensitivity about them, which is very in tune with what's going on. Their moods can shift like the moon phases, and if I hadn't previously mentioned, Cancer is ruled by the moon as well. So one of our female goddesses, Cancer, is actually a very it shifts, the moods shift with the tides, really. So Cancer can be quite cheery and then suddenly be quite down in the dumps, and this is not a drawback. This is just Cancer. They can be quite moody, they can be quite emotional. One minute they can be fine, and the next minute they can be a little bit depressive or upset. Things can trigger them, but not necessarily. I'm not saying that they're walking around and they're just a big emotional mess all the time, but there is a tendency for that. But actually, Cancerians can just know what's needed. They're very good at picking up on subtle nuances and kind of reading people in a way that perhaps they're not even aware that they're doing it, but they can kind of read people in their sense of vulnerability. And actually, my student, one of my students, Vanessa, she mentioned to me when we were talking about Cancerians, which she is one, She said Cancerians lead with their vulnerability, and I have to say I agree with that statement greatly. For some people, they might think that being vulnerable and showing any like kind of sense of emotion can be viewed as a weakness. But actually, with Cancerians, leading with vulnerability, understanding the power that being vulnerable contains. So you don't have to be this hard, emotionless, stoic leader. If you can kind of think of, perhaps this makes me sound horrible calling her emotionless, but thinking about somebody like the Queen. But actually, if you look at maybe the difference between the Queen and Princess Diana, and Princess Diana is a Cancerian, which we can look at in a little while. But Diana definitely led with her vulnerability. And the Queen is very stoic, and we don't see much of an emotional display from the Queen ever. Whereas with Diana, she was very human. We kind of related to her because she was very, she wasn't scared to be vulnerable in front of us, and she clearly had strong, she was very passionate, and she cared about not just her own children, but the world's children. So, there is that very strong maternal essence about Cancerians, whether that is that they will ever be a mum or have a family of their own, or whether the family is beyond that and incorporates something larger, like perhaps the land that they come from, and the children of the land that they come from, or the children of the world, maybe, depending on what the chart states. With Cancer, the sign Cancer, we can see a sense of patriotism, which can be about defending where we come from and where, our family, our clan, our tribe. There can be that patriotic element about Cancer. And actually, if we think about, things like gangsters, The Family, those gangster films like Goodfellas, or the series The Sopranos, which is one of my favourites of all time. So much emphasis on family, so much emphasis on, you might not be related to the family directly by blood. You might be somebody's bloodline. It's lots of different families that get together. But once you're in the family. And there's so much emphasis on getting together and having food. And it's just it's a little bit of a bubble. And, that might be a bit of an exaggeration or a slightly extreme example of family and that kind of sense of family and belonging that people would seek with that Cancerian kind of flavour. But actually, if you think about the nature of family life, families are strange. Everybody's family is different. We can talk about what, Cancer is all about family, but family is different to everybody that you speak to. Every family has their own little quirks and their own ways of doing things. Sometimes when you meet somebody and you just fit into their family, it can be that that they do things the way that feels like family to you. But you can be part of a family that, perhaps you're in a relationship, and the person you're in a relationship with, their family is very different to yours. The way that they do things is different. The way that they celebrate births and deaths and everything in between that can be completely alien to anything that you've ever experienced. So family is very unique, and the way that people are brought up is very unique to those individual families. So Cancer is very connected to that, and it's so much more than just family and home. It's about safety, where we've come from, where we feel safe, our reflex, our kind of our needs, and how we need to feel safe and seek out that kind of sense of security. So Cancer can be connected to that. It's where we feel a sense of belonging, where we go back and we just know that we belong somewhere. Not having a sense of belonging, not having somewhere that you can really feel like is your home or call home, not really having a family as such, can lead to you seeking for family in other areas, which may bring out the best or the worst in you. So Cancer really is quite a massive linchpin as far as your kind of emotional security and I guess kind of your adjustment to life and how well you adjust to situations, whether you grow up with a sense of inbuilt trauma response, or whether you have a sense of confidence that everything will be okay. So I've talked about the glyph. Now it's cardinal water, and cardinality is that instigating quality, and water is that retentive quality as well. Like I said, a lot of the Cancerians I know are the ones that really make an effort to bring the family together. I think that they kind of, retain or contain the family unit within them. They have this sense of just bringing everybody together. And it's so lovely because my mum and my sister have strong, my sister is Cancerian, Sun, Venus in Cancer, and my mum's got Moon, Jupiter and Uranus rising in Cancer. And they're both, it's very homey, comfort food. We go around and we have roast dinners, and it's just spending time with the family. And it's, I haven't got any Cancer in my chart. My North Node is in Cancer, but I am not, I love my family and I love spending time with my family, but I'm a Capricorn, and all I do is sit down and think, I've got to get this work done, I've got to do that work. And, family, I'm not saying it's not important to me, but it's one of the things that I don't always make so much effort with. And then when I'm there, I'm like, oh, this is really good for my soul, because, we forget about that sense of connection once it's not there. And you're kind of operating on a sort of a different level. You don't always notice that you've lost that connection, and then when you get back to it, it's almost like powering you back up again. Whenever I've gone back to visit my family in London, I just feel recharged, and I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful to have that connection with my family, because I know that not everybody does. But we all find our nourishment in different ways, and not only can we see in the natal chart where perhaps Cancer is, where we might seek a sense of belonging, where we might need to be cared for in some ways, or where we might need to provide care for others, but also where the moon is, we might find what nourishes us, and how we feel safe, and our responses to things, and our reactions and our trauma responses as well, any kind of inbuilt early life conditioning that we may have had. So these are very connected, and we will talk about the moon further down the line. It's just quite interesting. I did actually write an article recently, so please do check it out on my website. I think it was called Filling the Void with Venus and the Moon, and just looking at the connection between how we feel compelled to buy products through that have been marketed and advertised to us that appeal to our inbuilt fears. So it's quite interesting, because once you start looking at things like the moon and Venus, you could probably do like a year's worth of study on each, and you still wouldn't cover every base. You could do a lifetime study on one planet, I would imagine, and you might become an expert in that area, but you still don't know everything. It's just a never-ending quest for reaching the bottom of the issue. Anybody with an 8th house sun right now, or an 8th house moon, is probably hanging on my every word thinking, I need to know more. Anyway, so that's kind of Cancer, I think. Cancer covers the part of the body is the stomach and the breasts. Now, we talked about the breasts being a nourishing source, but also how the stomach is connected to the breasts, because as the baby suckling, we are having our stomach filled with nourishing fluid, which is passing on our immunities through the mother, and any kind of illness. I think my sister being super duper Cancerian, told me that when your baby is ill, your breasts naturally produce the right kind of antibodies and adapt to be the medicine for your baby. So it's almost like your body kind of knows exactly what to produce for your baby when it's ill. Now, I'm not a mum, but I love hearing this stuff from my sister, because it just gives me so much insight. So at best, Cancers are very caring. They're able to know what's needed. They're very protective of their loved ones. They're very nurturing and connected to their roots and their past. Like I said, being protective of loved ones. They're very defensive. Cancer can be seen as soft on the inside but hard on the outside. A bit like a Diamond bar, or is that an armadillo? I can't remember. I think it's an armadillo. But yeah, so Cancer is tough on the outside, and if you think about anybody whose family gets anyone who's looking after their family and gets in an argument over somebody that they love, they'll be very protective, and it's almost like they've got this shield of armour on while they're going into this kind of battle with whoever's threatened them. But actually, deep down they're being totally motivated by their emotional response. And I guess that's the softness on the inside of the Cancer, the emotional response, which suddenly brings out this power armor and they're ready to go to battle. So at worst, Cancer can be very subjective rather than objective. They can really take things personally. They can get very stuck in the past. They can be very indirect and quite emotional. Food issues are connected with Cancer. We've got comfort eating here as at worst. Lots of people can lean towards comfort eating, but with Cancer, it can be like a sense of emotional eating. And if we think about what that might be triggered by, if we think back to being very small children, babies, and crying and being fed on demand, there's a sense of safety and security in being nourished, having that food. But yeah, there can be a sense of, seeking that nourishment that we had as a child when mum fed us when we cried, and it was just immediately like, that was my biggest problem, and now my biggest problem is gone. And that's kind of it with that kind of comfort eating. I'm not saying that's it. I've solved everybody's comfort eating ever. That's not the case. But there is a root to that kind of sense of comfort and where the comfort comes from. And I think that it's very connected to that. Cancers can also be quite. They can hold on. Like I said, they can be quite retentive, and that can be sentimentally fueled. Sentimentally triggered. So they may not want to throw things away because, please don't throw away that hair clip, because that hair clip was from the first date I had with my boyfriend, it means a lot to me. Please don't throw away. I know it's broken, but please keep that hair clip. And then, can I throw away this box of rubbish? It's clearly rubbish. No, that's not rubbish. That's my old receipts from whenever I went to the supermarket. That was when things weren't so great with me and my ex, and I found a lot of comfort in that. So no, I want to keep that because that reminds me of some really important times of my life. They just want to hold on to things, maybe not that petty, but cuddly toys. I just know that hoarding can be quite it's not just Cancerian. Hoarding isn't just Cancerian. I think that it can be quite it's watery in its essence. Scorpio can be quite hoarderish. Cancerians can be quite hoarding. Also Taurians, they like to keep hold of things as well. There's some signs that hold on and there's some signs that let go. And I think with the water signs, they do tend to, maybe Pisces lets go a bit more, but Scorpio and Cancer are very holding on, retentive type of signs. So that's a bit about Cancer. Now let's have a look at the chart that I had. So yes, my Cancerian celebrity that I wanted to talk about was the People's Princess, Princess Diana Spencer, Lady Diana Spencer, who grew up in Althorpe, which is just around the corner from where I live, and she is buried there now. There's a lake in the middle of the grounds of, I think it's a palace, Althorpe Palace or manor, and she's buried in a kind of almost like a tumuli type mound in the middle of the lake. So, Princess Diana was affectionately known as the People's Princess, and she was quite, she's a very public maternal figure, very lunar, and she was really well loved by people. She was hugely loved. But actually, Princess Diana, being Sun and Mercury in Cancer, is somebody who's probably not just Cancerian, but, Mercury is a thinking planet, so probably somebody who had a very active mind. And, Mercury can be connected to anxiety to an extent. And, I think with Princess Diana, she had her own anxieties. I think it's quite well documented that she went through some issues. Obviously, she was in a very unhappy marriage with Prince Charles, which wasn't really based on love, but more duty. And she got two beautiful children out of it. She got William and Harry out of that marriage, and she was a very doting and caring mother to those two boys. But and very, I think she broke kind of, she her moon is in Aquarius as well, and Aquarius is quite a rebellious sign that doesn't necessarily do as it's told. And I think that she kind of broke royal tradition by insisting that she would bring up her children and not have a nanny who would be constantly caring I think that it was kind of an expectation that she would give her children over and that she wouldn't, be a mum to them. But I think that if you see the way that she is with her children, there's lots of pictures of her with William and Harry, and she was definitely very different in her style when bringing them up than perhaps previous royals had been. And so she did it her way with that moon in Aquarius. And Aquarius is also a community focused and community orientated, quite humanistic, quite humanitarian really, lunar placement. So the fact that people called her the People's Princess was quite interesting. And the Queen of Hearts as well, just there's so much emotion that goes into that kind of calling someone the Queen of Hearts. It really paints a picture. And it wasn't a peachy, perfect life that she had. She really battled with her own demons, and she had eating disorders. I think she did have anorexia and she did have bulimia, which is kind of like quite self-deprecating, because you're really punishing yourself with those kind of things, and you're really not allowing yourself to enjoy any kind of pleasures that life can afford you. So she had, unfortunately, quite a dysfunctional marriage. I think that led to some of her eating disorders. And like I said, food played a key part for her. She really battled with her demons as far as the eating disorders concerned. She also had Venus in Taurus, which, is very body orientated. And I think another factor that led to Princess Diana's eating disorders was the fact that she was so hounded by the paparazzi. And, newspapers often have a way of really picking on certain features that you might have and really blowing them out of proportion. And I definitely think that that's something that happened with Diana. She definitely had she battled with demons in a very public way with the paparazzi always getting pictures of her and showing her off in her worst light when they could. So it's quite difficult, but she was very comforting as an individual. And, she had a lot of royal duties that she would go out, and she was, she was even prepared to endanger her own life to fight for her causes. So she'd go through the fields with the landmines, if you remember any of that. And, you wouldn't imagine that a princess would do something like that. I'm sure that they checked it out first and made sure that it was okay, but you wouldn't expect a princess to be going out and walking through fields of landmines. She just really wanted to raise awareness to some of the dangers that people have to face growing up, that, why should children have to come from a place where, there's so much danger, so much difficulty. So Princess Diana is a great example of Cancerians. Now let's look at my two, I've got two subscribers. One of them is Vanessa, one of my students, who was the one that talked about being a Cancerian that leads with vulnerability. And Vanessa has Sun, Jupiter, Chiron, the asteroid, Moon and Venus all in Cancer. Now I've talked to Vanessa about her chart, as I've been studying her chart with her through her classes. And Vanessa's she's got quite a Cancer and Taurus signature, because she's got Taurus rising, all those planets in Cancer, but they're in the second house as well, which is a Taurian zone. And she has Moon and Venus in conjunction, which the Moon is the ruler of Cancer and Venus also rules Taurus as well. So I feel like security and safety may have played a big part in Vanessa's life from probably quite the early years. So she may have perhaps either been born into a sense of having some kind of security there, which maybe in later life she's not been able to really replicate for her own family, or it could be the other way around, that she came from an early life where perhaps she lacked a sense of security in some way, and through that she's wanting to provide that for her family now. And family is very important for Cancerians, and that sense of belonging and being together. And sometimes when we'll do our classes, she'll be round at her sister's instead of at her house, which is really nice, because I think she's got quite a good relationship with her sister. And it sort of reminds me a bit of mine and my sister, actually, our relationship, and the fact that my sister's Cancerian as well. So food will be key for Vanessa. And we did joke actually the last time that we spoke. I think her boyfriend and possibly her sister as well have Taurus ascendants too. I think they've got quite a strong Taurus flavour going on in their family synastry and that. And her boyfriend really enjoys his craft beer, and he likes to experience the taste and really get into the sensual aspect of food. But with Cancerians, like I said, there can be an emotional aspect towards food as well. So for Vanessa, feeding her family may be more about showing love than necessarily even just the duty of eating. And, food can be, what's that saying? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. There is a large sense of, an emotional connection with food, as I've described, that sense of belonging, that sense of emotional response, which we require to be satisfied through food. So that's Vanessa, and she's got a lot of stuff going on in Capricorn as well, opposite her Cancer stellium. So she's got a seesaw with a massive cluster in Cancer, and also a handful of, she's got Uranus, Neptune and Saturn all sitting in Capricorn as well. So she's got quite an interesting chart, which is very relationship orientated, because it involves that seesaw of the self and others. And, I know she's had a real tough time of it over the past sort of few years. And she's had, some pretty heavy transits going on up in that Capricorn sector of the chart, which is opposing all of her Cancer stuff, which is quite challenging. Vanessa, thank you for letting me talk about your chart today. And my other client that I've got is Ava, who has loads of planets in Cancer as well. She's got Venus, Sun, Mars and Mercury sitting up there in Cancer in the 10th house. And she also happens to have a watery moon as well. So she's got, this is a very sensitive person who's, with that water moon as well. It's very, having anything in Cancer can be quite, like I said, quite intuitive and quite psychic almost. But having that moon in Scorpio as well really adds to that ability to just pick up on the subtleties and just know what's going on. I kind of think of water signs as having a like an invisible kind of sponge around them that's really massive and extends really far out. So whenever they're walking down the road, whenever they're doing anything at work, and somebody walks into that kind of invisible sponge, they can almost pick up on something that's going on with that person without actually having to have even had a conversation about it. So they're very intuitive and quite psychic in their way. And with Ava, she's got Sun, Mars and Mercury in Cancer. So this is somebody who's probably quite direct with what they have to say, and probably quite, I know that, with Mars ruling Aries, there's a sense of not being backwards about going forwards. And with that side-winding, side-to-side aspect of the way that the crab walks, the Cancerian crab walks, this might be a crab that is quite quick and quite, it will go side to side, but it can actually lash forward as well. So as far as being protective is concerned, this is probably someone who's really not scared to get involved and, embrace a bit of conflict. And when somebody does upset her or her family, she may be actually very quick to act. And in the same way, very quick to act when somebody needs something. I can imagine this is somebody that really defends their friends when their friends are in trouble, and might even really be somebody who fights for the underdog as well. Actually, I think somebody who cares about making sure that it's fair. She's got Venus in Cancer as well, so fairness is going to be a part of her life, and fighting for fairness. And she may be in situations where she says that isn't fair. That's not fair. That's not right. That shouldn't happen that way, and have to experience unfairness. But ultimately, that's part of what Venus has to say in Cancer. And I think that family will be a huge thing for you as well, Ava. And with the water signs as well, they have their very own type of creativity. And when we're carried through the womb, the first home that we know, inside our mothers, and then we're birthed into the world, that relationship with our mother is a very, very key one from a very young age. And having such a harmonious aspect between your sun and moon placements. And if you don't know what I mean by the harmonious aspect, it's called a trine, which is a 120-degree aspect, which I discussed back in the elements. This may be that your mum has a very, I guess, perhaps you really look up to your mum, and she has a very strong leading role in your life. So, Ava, that's you. I know we've talked about your chart previously when you come for consultations. And yes, it's a very interesting chart. I know that Ava's very interested in her astrology, and obviously Vanessa is as well. Both, have either had a reading or have been a student of mine. And, I think that, picking up on something. Astrology, I think, is an intuitive art to an extent. There is a technical aspect to it, but there's also a very intuitive aspect. So water signs, I think, do lean towards doing things that are kind of a sense of feeling something over a sense of academic quality sometimes. Not saying that water signs can't be academic, just that they kind of feel their way around things rather than, having that kind of Virgoan rules and regulations. Having said that, Ava does have Virgo rising, so she may well, appreciate a bit of structure and a bit of practicality. And I guess maybe that ascendant is actually a little bit of a saving grace in amongst all that water, because there's so much of it. When actually, and she's actually got a very nice aspect from Saturn in Taurus to her ascendant as well, so that's quite grounding. So she's not totally wishy-washy. She's not totally getting washed in and out with the tide, actually, this poor little crab, looking for something to grab onto. She's got plenty to grab onto, so she's quite practical as well. So thanks, Ava, for letting me interpret your chart for you on the show. I think I did talk about you before, actually, in the water episode. If you have enjoyed what I'm talking about today, if you could just screenshot the show that you're listening to on your phone and share it on Instagram with me or any form of social media, don't forget to tag me. On Instagram, I'm at Stellium Astro. And please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and write me a lovely review. And hit me with 5 stars if you're feeling it. Obviously, I'm not trying to persuade you. I just think that, 5 stars is good karma. And that's it really for today. This is the second time round, unfortunately. I've had to do 2 shows, and I didn't manage to make this one any shorter, annoyingly. Hopefully this one will not get lost in the ether. And I look forward to speaking to you next week, where we're going to be talking about everybody's favourite big cat, Leo, with her luscious mane. So everybody's got a Leo that, inspires them and leads by example. So let's talk about Leo next time. I'm looking forward to it. I'll speak to you guys then. Take care now.